Thanks, Chairman. Good morning, everyone. I better hurry up, seeing that there's a bell behind me. I propose to talk about 4 different areas that the Society of Vincent de Paul are involved in some way or another. The first is to set out some statistics to indicate how many of our citizens are struggling on the experiences of based on the experiences of our 10,500 volunteers across the country and publicly available data. The second is some similarities existing today with the era in which the Society of St Vincent de Paul was actually founded. Thirdly is a summary of the work that we in Vincent de Paul are providing and trying to do in Ireland today. And finally, a number of suggestions or proposals around what we might do as the Irish people as we approach the centenary of the birth of the Republic. First, some statistics about Ireland today. Employment. 22% of all households in Ireland are now jobless. 324,000 fewer people are in employment now compared with 2007. Turning to debt, almost a quarter of all households in Ireland are in arrears with at least one bill or loan repayment. 25% of people in Ireland report running out of money to pay ordinary bills or buy food in the past 12 months. In 38% of households in Ireland, expenditure exceeds disposable income, sometimes resulting in people going into debt or arrears. Poverty. 1/4 of the population is going without basic necessities like nutritious food, adequate heating and warm clothing. Over 730,000 people in Ireland are living in poverty. 1 in 5, almost 104,000 people of those in poverty have a job. Many of those are self-employed. 232,000 children live in poverty. More than 1 in 5 people living in poverty had to go without adequate heating in their home last year because they could not afford it. On housing, over 100,000 households are waiting for local authority housing. And turning to our own experiences, the number of those requesting help from the Society has increased by over 100% since 2009. The range of requests have become more complex, including high and, in many instances, multiple debt issues. The list could go on, but it is sufficient to answer the question that has been posed. How stands the Republic when it comes to justice and equality? The answer clearly is not good. Worse still, in the past number of years, we have gone backwards. We in Vincent de Paul know the impact on people as we are in a unique position of our 10,500 volunteers visiting those in need in their own homes every week of the year, listening to their problems and trying to respond as best we can. On average, our members are making about 8,000 home visits per week. There is no other group that have the same insights as our membership. That qualifies us to speak with some experience in relation to the difficulties that are on the ground. It is also apparent to us that the challenges facing people have spread from those dependent on social welfare to those in low-paid employment and those traditionally regarded as middle class, people who pay for everything and get nothing. The second area I will speak a bit about is the origin of the Society of Vincent de Paul, as so much of it is relevant in the world of today. The Society of St Vincent de Paul was not in fact founded by St Vincent de Paul, but by a 20-year-old university student, Frederick Ozanam, who in 1833, along with 6 friends, founded what they called the First Conference of Charity, to work among the poor in Paris. Frederick and his friends took St Vincent de Paul as their patron because, as Frederick said, even the revolutionaries admired St Vincent and forgave him the crime of having loved God. Sadly, after a short but eventful life, Frederick died on September the 8th, 1853 in Marseille in France at the age of 40. Yet despite his short life, Frederick left the members of the Society of St Vincent de Paul, indeed the world, with a powerful and lasting legacy of writings rich in inspiration and practical suggestions as to how we live out our lives. Such was the influence and vision of Frederick that the Society of St Vincent de Paul, that started with just 6 young people in 1833, has grown so that today there are approximately 1 million members of the Society working in 150 countries on all 5 continents. Significantly, the 3 core principles of that First Conference of Charity, spirituality, faith, community and service, are still the cornerstones of the work and ethos of the Society of St Vincent de Paul throughout the world today. And so attempting to realise Frederick's vision and live out his challenge means that the possibilities of Vincentian action are almost limitless. Because being poor is not just about being short of money and material things. It can also mean having a physical or mental disability, being sick or old, lonely or illiterate. And the poor also includes those who are made to feel alone and unwanted. For example, immigrants, asylum seekers, migrant workers who have sometimes find themselves among others who are indifferent, even hostile. Being poor can also mean being a prisoner, an alcoholic or a drug addict. And so Blessed Frederick knew that service to those in need must promote their human dignity. And that's why he told the early members of the society that, and I quote, "Yours must be a work of love, of kindness. You must give of your time, your talents, yourself, because each poor person is a unique person of God's fashioning with an inalienable right to respect." In effect, he was telling the members of the Society of Vincent de Paul to look for and find the face of God in all those who seek our assistance. But Frederick was also very strong in his belief that the Society of St. Vincent de Paul must not only be concerned with relieving immediate need, it must also address the social structures within society that causes that need. And so he told St. Vincent de Paul volunteers that, and I quote, "You must not be content with simply tiding the poor over a poverty crisis, but rather you must study their condition and the injustices which brought about such poverty with the aim of a long-term improvement." So Frederick was telling the earliest St. Vincent de Paul volunteers that charity and justice must go together, and that Christian solidarity requires active engagement with our neighbours, particularly the poor and the deprived, no matter how difficult or challenging that might prove for each one of us. He said, I quote, "The knowledge of social well-being and reform cannot be learned just from books, nor from the public platform, but only by climbing the stairs to the poor man's room, sitting by his bedside, feeling the same cold that pierces him. Because it is only when you have personally experienced these conditions that you can begin to understand and grasp his problems and may then hope to solve them." And this is the essence of the work of St. Vincent de Paul volunteers today. So back in the 1830s, Frederick was in fact strongly promoting the concept of Catholic social justice, the rights and dignity of every individual and the need for equality of opportunity in education and employment. And all of this nearly 60 years before the publication of the first great encyclical Rerum Novarum in 1891. As we approach 2016, has a lot changed from the type of society Frederick was challenging 170 years ago? Sadly, I don't think so. Last year here in Ireland, the St. Vincent de Paul received 100,000 calls for assistance and spent over 70 million responding to those calls from people in nearly every parish in Ireland. In other words, responding to calls for help from our friends, our neighbours and their children. That 70 million plus was divided between spending on services for people in need and direct support to families and individuals. For example, last year we spent over €30 million on services such as 1,000 social units, mainly for older people, 14 hostels, providing accommodation for over 350 homeless people each night, over 150 charity shops which both provide a service and also much needed funds for the society, 11 holiday centres providing holidays for families, older people and children, 15 family resources and daycare centres, including preschool and creche facilities. That list could go on. And in direct financial support to households, the Society spent over 40 million, for example, 15 million in cash assistance, general bills, rent mortgages, medical and funeral expenses, 10 million on food, 7 million on energy bills, 5 million on education from preschool to university. To manage our scarce resources, we work closely with other voluntary organisations, including MABs and the credit unions. Our aim is to solve problems. If we can get someone else to provide the solution, all the better. It is a chilling fact nearly 80% of the 100,000 calls for assistance to the Society come from people relying on some form of social welfare payment, and nearly two-thirds of all calls come from households with children. This indicates very graphically that despite comments to the contrary by various politicians, economists and some sections of the media, welfare supports in Ireland are clearly inadequate. Indeed, over Christmas 2012, we estimate that we responded to calls for help from over 175,000 households. So it's our experience that the extent and depth of poverty and need in Ireland is increasing daily. This increase is due primarily to the effects of the current economic downturn, in particular the corrosive impact of rising unemployment, the continuous reduction in family income, welfare payments, health and education support to the poorest households in the country, resulting from the austerity measures introduced by the government in recent budgets, And accompanying this is the increasing mental stress and sense of hopelessness now being experienced by so many adults and children. That is why we have begun an online campaign on our website called Making Your Voice Heard, where we are seeking public support to end austerity budgets. The people seeking our assistance played no part in causing the economic crisis. They cannot carry any more of the burden of resolving it. And so the work of the Society of St Vincent de Paul must go on. Indeed, it is sobering to recall the words of Mr Frederick Osmond, first spoken in 1842, when he said, "I am asking the volunteers of the Society of Vincent de Paul to look after people who have too many needs and not enough rights, people who demand with reason a fuller share in public affairs, security in work and safeguards against poverty." Sadly, those words are as relevant today in Ireland of 2013 as they were back in 1842. So everything changes, and yet nothing changes. So finally, as we approach 2016, what are the lessons to be learned and what do we need to do? Firstly, I believe that during the Celtic Tiger years, we lost a sense of our deeper values and that sense of looking after each other. The pursuit of wealth, the second house, the overseas apartment became our values. We hear regular comments that we will get back to where we were. There are many aspects of where we were that are best forgotten about. As Vincent de Paul Society, we have noticed since the difficult times the great sense of generosity of the Irish people. I think deep down people know that they have lost something and want to look after people. Hopefully we will recapture and retain that sense of values for the future. Secondly is the failure of governments to provide the leadership and management of the economy that is required. Our political system needs an overhaul. The expectations of the public and the various pressure groups means that politicians can easily be persuaded to make promises that they really know they cannot deliver on. We then end up in the blame game. It is time we looked at a system of elected representatives to manage local councils, and we need only 4 or 5 of them. Separately, we elect a much smaller number of politicians to manage the affairs of the country. They can make decisions based on the reality of the overall economic situation and not be influenced by local short-term issues. If we do not change, there is no doubt we will repeat the same mistakes, and it is the citizens that will again carry the burden. Thirdly, the Eurozone needs to be more radically integrated or disbanded. In the past, every country had to manage its own affairs. If they made a mess of it, they had to resort to interest rate changes or devaluations or some other mechanisms to get themselves sorted. Those are no longer available. Individual countries now have a raft of excuses when something goes wrong. It's Europe, it's the ECB, it's other countries needing a bailout, the list goes on. This cannot continue. Governments in individual countries must manage their affairs, not get elected on spurious promises and blame everyone else when it all goes wrong. The tragic part of this is that it is the poor and vulnerable that will always suffer the most when the problems arise. Europe is lurching from one crisis to another. It is only a matter of time when one crisis too many hits and is too big for another temporary solution. So let's get it right or accept that it is not working and act accordingly. Fourthly, we continue to export our youngest and best talent out of the country. We must find ways to stop this. It will be a shame on all of us if in 2016 our young people are still forced to emigrate. We need more radical approaches to job creation and stimulating growth. Government has to do more to create an environment for job creation. Calculated risks will need to be taken. It is better to take those risks than continue with mass immigration and unemployment. Fifthly, the thousands of families we in the Society of Vincent de Paul visit cannot take any more. These families now include people in low-paid employment, the self-employed, people in good employment with debts that they cannot handle. The profile of those seeking our assistance has radically changed, and so is our response to that. More charges or tax increases simply will drive more and more people to poverty. Again, not something that we want to see as we approach 2016. Let's stop austerity at this point for these people. Give them a fighting chance and their dignity. I accept the finances have to be balanced, look at other options, stimulate growth, get rid of the mountain of debt which has been unjustly landed at the door of ordinary people. Finally, I could sum it all up in a call the Society of Vincent de Paul made in February of this year when we asked for a national debate on social justice. I quote as follows from that public statement. "Social justice must be at the centre of a nation which cares for all of its people equally. That has been largely ignored while political and economic issues have been concentrated on. Now is the time to discuss what matters most to a nation, its people and the situation in which they live, work or in too many cases try to exist without work. It is generally accepted we lost something as a nation during the Celtic Tiger years. Now is the time to discuss the changes needed and to prepare for when, hopefully, the nation begins to emerge from this difficult period. There are no easy answers, but that is no reason not to commence the debate. We must learn the lessons from the economic disaster caused by an unequal society. Everyone should be involved in this debate: government, politicians, employers, trade unions, NGOs, charities, other social partners and individual citizens. A byproduct of the economic downturn we have suffered is that our lives are being controlled and managed by an increasingly smaller number of people. That cannot be good for democracy. As we approach 2016, what better way to celebrate our 100 years as an independent nation than to commence that debate now? Thank you very much.